Hey everyone, welcome to the first in a series of short videos that we're calling Mental Health Minis. We're going to be talking to people from around the sporting arena, competitors, backroom staff, fans and media, to discuss their experiences with mental health and how sport has affected them both positively and negatively. We're going to get as many people as we can involved and show you that mental health can affect anyone from all walks of life, whether they be significant public figures or just everyday people, and how sport can have a positive effect on them and can really bring them up, but also how it can go the other side and really kind of take them away from it and really bring them down. But to show people that there are ways of dealing with it, you're not alone, and that it is okay to talk about these things. So on that note, I'm really delighted to welcome Danny Mills, who plays for Dulwich Hamlet as a forward. Danny, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Great work that you guys are doing, and really happy and proud to be a part of it.
No, it's much appreciated. I'm also joined by my colleague on the Canaries Trust mental health team, which over the course of the videos you'll hear a lot more about us. Nick, welcome.
Good afternoon. Pleased to be here.
So the purpose of these is just small kind of fireside level chats, just to hear from people about what their experiences are. Danny's been campaigning for some time around mental health, particularly in football. So Danny, tell us a bit about your experiences with your mental health and what you've seen and come across.
Yeah, so obviously within the footballing world, mental health in general has progressed and evolved over the years, and I think it's definitely more spoken about than what it has been in previous years. In February of this year, I led and organised a campaign which was called the Shout Out for Mental Health campaign, where I brought Dulwich Hamlet and Whitehawk Football Club, one of my previous clubs, together to do a series of events to help raise awareness for mental health and raise money in partnership with the Mind charity. And I suppose the inspiration behind it all was just really the experiences that I've had, and probably a lot of players that I've played with have had. And I think the older that I've got, the more that I've seen, the effects that football actually has on the players' mental health. Now, I'll give an example where, anxiety and fear is something that's always going to be in the game, but it's something that really affects the players. So, I've played with players that have to physically vomit before each game, players that would rather have games called off than on because of that anxiety and that fear of going out and making mistakes. And even, managers bullying players on training grounds, at half time, in games. It's all the things you don't see. And that has a serious detriment to the players' mental health. And for me personally, it's been great to just have the space to be able to raise that awareness and to campaign.
And in terms of kind of what you've seen, do you feel that as we go forward with this is being spoken about more and more people are understanding, those that, like you say, managers that may bully players are starting to appreciate what they're feeling, how they react to players? Do you think players are able to handle the pressures more because they're able to talk about it?
Absolutely. I mean, you only have to look at the EFL now being sponsored by a mental health charity, Mind, and that alone is a big step forward, because players now know that there's active support for them. There's accessibility. Obviously, within the Football League, you have the PFA, and you have a lot of support there. Not so much in the non-league game, which is something that I'm trying to campaign for and get more help for players. But I certainly believe that with more high-profile people coming out and speaking about their problems, it's certainly helping players along the way.
Nick, you wanted to ask a question?
Yeah, I wondered, Danny, how you say that a lot of progress has been made in terms of talking about mental health, and I think it certainly has been. But I wonder how common it is for teammates changing room to normalise that conversation around mental health, especially if they see the sorts of things that you're describing, such as players being anxious before the game. How common is it for teammates to talk about how they're feeling?
Very uncommon, I suppose, is the short answer. Something that's not really spoken about in the dressing room, even to this day, to be honest. I think as a more senior and older player, I try and make it my business to not necessarily speak to players in front of the group, but sometimes it's about pulling players one-to-one seeing how they're feeling, seeing how they're getting on. You know, I've been around it long enough now to know when a player may be struggling. And sometimes it's just about having a conversation with them or just listening. You know, sometimes you don't need to say anything. You just need to listen and give the forum and the floor to the individual that may be struggling. It's something that does need to improve. There's always been that stigma attached to it, especially amongst men, as we all know, but especially within a footballing dressing room where there's a lot of that culture of banter and things like that. So it's uncommon, it's difficult, but I think we're certainly making strides forward. I think we're definitely in a better place than what we were, say, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And we just need to keep it going. You know, it's not something that's going to change overnight. I think what we always need to remember is that mental health is 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. It's not anything that's going away. It doesn't take time off. It's not part-time. It's full-time, and it's here to stay, to be honest. And it's just how it's managed and how we look after it. But like I said, I think as time goes on, the better it's going to be.
Do you think that, I mean, you mentioned about one of you, like you being a senior player, feeling kind of responsible for what goes on. Do you think there is a definitive age range of it affects younger players more because they feel unable to talk, or do you feel it's throughout the entire football spectrum, age spectrum, that everyone struggles with this and everyone feels they can't always necessarily open up? Do you feel it gets easier as you get older or not?
Absolutely. I think the older, I don't necessarily think it gets easier, but I think it gets more manageable. So I think the older that you get, you learn from your experiences. I think having, you know, if you're obviously someone that's struggling with mental health, I don't think there's a good part of it, or, you know, it's there. And with younger players, the main thing with them is ego, embarrassment, the stigma attached to it, and also not knowing how to actually deal with it. Sometimes these are new experiences and new feelings that you're having, and you haven't come across them before, and you don't really know how to handle it. The older that you get, you may have experienced these things before, and I think as you get older, your maturity obviously gets better, and also I think you don't really care too much about what people think the older that you get. You begin to realize that there's more to life than the opinions of others, and you want to actually help yourself and help others. Younger players, obviously, like I said, there's a massive ego attached to it at times. They want to feel like the big man. They don't want to feel like they don't want to show weakness and things like that. But like I said, the older that you get, personally, I feel that it gets easier to manage, not necessarily easier to deal with, but just easier to manage.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that sentiment, actually. In terms of how you feel this fits in the wider world, I mean, for you personally, do you feel that sport is positive, negative, or do you think it has its ups and downs and it can flit in and out of both?
Yeah, I think context is always a very important thing when it comes to these things. So if we look from a player point of view, when you're in it and you're playing day in, day out, week in, week out, it can have a detriment to your mental health just because it's so intense. And that's not to say that you're necessarily someone that's maybe spiraling out of control, but it's so full on that it can just be a drain on you mentally and physically. When that stops, like it has done for many of non-league, it has the opposite effect. So you suffer from mental health problems because you're not playing and you're not in it. Yeah. So you can't really get away from it, to be honest. But when you're used to having that routine of playing on a weekend, like I know I've certainly struggled getting up on a Saturday and not having football. Is just like, I've been doing this my whole life. So it is hard, you know, not to have that routine. For the fans, I think sport is everything. Especially if you're someone that is obviously passionate about it. And I think not having football or whatever sport it is has definitely had a bad effect on people's mental health. Having that routine of getting up on a Saturday, going to your local greasy spoon, going to the pub for a pint, going to the game, having a meal after, this is a part of people's lives. And, you know, people work hard Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. A lot of them probably doing jobs they don't want to do, but they know that when they get to a Saturday, they can let loose and enjoy their football. So I think sport it has a massive impact on people.
And it's amazing how not just sport, but results of sport. I mean, it feels weird that we're having this conversation today. So obviously Nick and myself, big Norwich fans, we had a fantastic win last night, played brilliantly. Massive. And most Norwich fans, there you go, Nick 7, he's all right, are probably euphoric at this point. But if we have another season like we did in the Premier League, there are people that almost base their mental health, not because they want to, just because they enjoy football so much that their mental health is based on the results of their football club, that if Norwich go up and we have another season like we did in the Premier League, it will really affect them. And I know that there are people that are non-football fans that will look at that and go, I don't understand that. But I think it is such a big thing that we need to think about, that there are so many factors that can cause problems. People have issues with mental health for all sorts of reasons, and some of them don't even need a trigger. I know myself, I've had issues in the past where something's triggered it, and I know I've had issues in the past where it's crept up on me for no reason other than just it's hit me for something and nothing's triggered it. And I think we need to be more aware of that. Nick, you've got another question?
Yeah, so my question, following on from that, I think, is just about the impact of fans when they are in the ground on players. And there's been a lot of discussion around making grounds safe for LGBT fans. We've had Black Lives Matter and thinking about the impact of making grounds anti-racist spaces as well. If you're struggling as a player, how much does the level of support or not from fans impact you, do you think?
It's certainly a big thing. I mean, I've kind of based even who I signed for based on fan bases, to be honest, and I think that's why I find myself at Dulwich Hamlet, because Dulwich Hamlet, I'm not sure how much you guys know about the fan base there, but they are probably one of the most inclusive clubs in football, to be honest. You know, they actively champion anti-racism. They actively champion the LGBTQ community. Everything is geared towards being inclusive and being community-based. My former club, Whitehawk, as well, was exactly the same. And for me, I can only speak for myself, but that's an important factor for me. Having a fan base that respects community, and also respects the players as well. You know, you want to be in an environment which, you know, look, we're in a results-based business. We're never going to go away from that. And if you're losing games, look, people ain't going to always like you and be your friend. But at the end of the day, you want to be in an environment which is respectful, and an environment where you feel comfortable as well to come to work. You know, at the end of the day, this is our workplace and this is where we work. But going off from Dave's point on results as well, it is huge. It is huge as well, because as a player, and it probably took my wife a while to get her head around, but if I lose a game, that's my weekend ruined. If I play poorly, that's me done for the weekend. Older I've gotten, again, with more experience, you don't bring it home with you. But, you know, if you have a bad result and you play poorly, it is horrible. You win a game, you think, you buzz in, you fancy going out for a meal, all of that. You want to enjoy it. But it does have a big impact.
I know. I obviously, when you agreed to do this, I looked into background a little bit so I could research. And I know you've played for Peterborough at a relatively high standard. You've had trial at Rangers, and you've obviously now at non-league with Dulwich. And it's my question is: do you think enough is done throughout the football pyramid to investigate and help with mental health? And I know I'm probably putting you on the spot a little bit there, but do you think enough is done throughout the pyramid?
In the non-league game, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Nowhere near. Don't even know what to do if you're struggling for mental health. And like I said, that's something that I am personally championing at the moment. I'm working behind the scenes to get more support for mental health, for help with injuries, for basic things that really should be in the game. We talk about we have the best league in the world. That's what we say, don't we? We invented this game. This is our game. That's what we say. So surely the support that you get at the highest level should be mirrored in all aspects and all levels of the game if we want to set the example for the rest of the world. In the Football League, so much more support is there. You've obviously got the PFA, who have so players have access to well-being, mental health services. They can pick up the phone. They can have anonymous sort of support lines and confidential support lines where they can call. So I definitely feel like there is work and there is investments. There's teams in those organisations to deal with that. In the non-league game, nothing like that exists. And like I said, it's something that I am trying very hard to actually get involved in.
And I think just on that note, there'll be a number of players that will be aware of that, and hopefully aim is that people see this, and I think people will appreciate those efforts from you.
Yeah, definitely.
I obviously conscious I don't want to take up too much of your time, and the whole point is meant to be short. So I suppose from my point of view, have you got any advice for people out there, whether they be footballers, fans, or anyone that's struggling?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult it's very difficult to say advise someone on mental health, because it's all about timing, and it's all about their timing. It's all about when you feel ready to have a conversation about it. If you are someone that is struggling, I would look at those closest to you first. I'd look at those closest to you. I'd look at those who you feel confident to open up to, and just have a conversation about how you're feeling. If not, there are plenty of charities and services out there, like the Mind charity, that offer free counselling and free advice, where you can at least start a conversation and get the ball rolling. I think sometimes when you look at if you're in a bad place, sometimes it can be so difficult to look at the finish line and think, when am I actually going to feel better again? But I think you have to break things down in building blocks and say, do you know what? The first step is, I'm going to talk to my mum, or I'm going to talk to my sister, or I'm going to talk to my cousin, or I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to call a charity, and then go from there.
Thank you so much for that. I think you're right, is that it is around those. I mean, I know my partner she's fantastic to me whenever I'm struggling, and I know many people who struggle who do look to their friends and family, and providing they feel they can open up for them, that's where it starts. So, yeah. Nick, have you got anything you want to add?
No, I think we've covered a lot of it. I just think I think probably the main challenge going forward is just how to create a sport that is inclusive and looks after people, while also is results focused, which it will always be, as we've said. And I guess that is the challenge, and the onus is on everybody, and the bar is set by clubs and the FA and the people that manage things at all levels to come up with a solution and a way forward, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's all about getting your own house in order, making sure that things are good in-house. And some advice that I always give to the league clubs or the Premier League clubs, if I'm able to be in the room to speak to them, is have partnerships with your local non-league clubs, because at the end of the day, you guys are the ones with the resources. You are the guys with the finances, but also you're the guys that have the platform as well. So I'm not sure what the local non-league clubs are around sort of the Norwich area, but have the conversations with their fans. What can we do to help you? Is there any advice that we can give? Do different campaigns together, support each other. When fans are allowed back into stadiums, invite them to the games. They can invite you to their games, and that's how we start to build up a football family and a football community.
And I think, and I speak for most football fans here, that it as much as we might argue that our team is the greatest in the world, we all know that we're all watching the same sport, and we all want it to be enjoyable for everyone.
Absolutely.
So, Danny, I'm going to call it there, just because obviously I want to keep these short so that people can view them as and when they get time. I want to thank you so much for joining. It's hugely appreciated, taking time out of your schedule and talking about something that I know means a lot to you as well as us. And hopefully this can be the start of a nice conversation to get people talking about this kind of thing and get more involved on this sort of subject. And Nick, as my colleague on this, thanks for joining us. And between us, hopefully we can make a success of these and get a bit of reach and see some people. So, okay.
Absolutely.
Danny, thank you so much.
No, thank you very much for having me. Really appreciate it.
David.